All right, we want to get back to the big story of the night, the first and possibly only presidential debate between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris.
We want to tackle the notable moments from Philadelphia with our CBS News Chicago political analysts. We're joined now by former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot and former head of the Illinois Republican Party, Pat Brady. All right, let's start with just the goals for each candidate. It was contentious at some points. What do you think, Mayor, was the goal, or in some cases the plan of attack for each candidate, and did they accomplish what they set out to do?
Well, I have to tell you, I don't know what Donald Trump was doing up on the stage, and we'll talk more about that. I think he gave in to every bad instinct that he possibly could have, and his team can't be happy tonight. I think Kamala Harris's big plan had to be reintroduce herself, keep introducing herself to the public, look presidential, look like and talk about issues, talk about the future. And frankly, I think she did a masterful job of laying constant little traps for him to walk into, and he tripped every single one of them.
Pat?
Oh yeah, he lost his mind. He about the first 15 minutes were pretty solid, I thought, for him, because the issues were better for him. They're talking about the economy, and I thought she started out horribly weak, but then she got her sea legs and was pretty effective in baiting him, and he got worse as it went on. At one point, when he was talking about eating the dogs and that nonsense, and it got progressively worse. And I thought her goal should be, as the mayor just said, introduce herself even more to the public and act presidential. And in this case, I'll add a third element: is don't be a lunatic. So I think
don't talk about eating dogs.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Don't talk about Democrats killing babies. I mean, there are things.
Israel's going to be gone in 2 years.
I mean, there were just things that came out of this guy's mouth tonight. You just sit there and you think, how is he even the nominee of any party? How was he ever elected in the first place? I mean, it was an embarrassment for us, frankly, as a country, that he's up there and taken seriously, because I've watched countless numbers of presidential debates going back to the 1970s. I've never seen a candidate perform so poorly on a national stage.
The thing is, though, Mayor, 46% says floor, 47% says ceiling. He's going to get that 78 million votes. And as we talked earlier today, the 7 states that need to get your people out. I think that she did a lot of work tonight towards that goal. But the rhetoric you hear out of him, and this is a 10-year-old show now, we've been watching this, it's the same stuff, and it motivates his folks.
They were supposed to cut the mics when they weren't on. That didn't necessarily happen. Do you think that helped or hurt one of the two?
Well, I think, frankly, it was inconsequential. I think the bigger thing was he wouldn't look at her ever. He would not use her name ever. He referred to her as her or she. And any woman who has been in a workplace, who's been dismissed, diminished, or ignored by a male colleague, watching that tonight, that resonated with them. And if his goal was, I want to reach those suburban women, I want to reach those Republican women, I want to reach those women that are on the fence, it was a total turnoff, because he was so categorically dismissive and disrespectful of the Vice President of the United States in a way that he treated her in I think, a sexist, misogynist way. I think he did not do himself any favors.
Yeah, no more debates. If I were her, I'd be just take my ball and go home and campaign for the next 55 days, because she's accomplished all her goals so far, which was to become presidential and introduce herself to the country. And I think she's right there. We'll see what the polls indicate. It's still going to be close, but I think that she moved her ball forward. And the Trump show's done. It's been 10 years of this. And I think the country, she was so smart to keep talking about the future and moving on, and we're not going back. And those candidates, typically with the smile on their face, usually win.
Yeah.
Okay. Mayor?
I was just going to add that the other issue, obviously, that's important is the question of choice. I thought her answer was absolutely masterful. But importantly, David Plouffe put out a tweet. David Plouffe, who's now one of the senior advisors to the campaign, formerly ran President Obama's first campaign. They were doing real-time testing of themes with undecided voters. 40% difference in favorability of her response on choice than Trump's.
Well, speaking of tweets, we have one that we want to pass along here, because this just came in with Taylor Swift endorsing Kamala Harris.
And the last time we were all together at the DNC, we talked about the star power, the celebrity, the questions about whether Taylor Swift or Beyonce would be there. So while in the greater scheme of things, you know, we're talking about the issues, an endorsement like this shows that at least some people are coming out after this debate.
This is risky, though. This is what I warned the Democrats.
I agree.
You get too elitist, you turn people off you want to get out. And I was worried about that at the convention. That Taylor Swift, to me, that's not a big positive. And
go ahead, Pat. You
want to motivate Gen Z to vote or the younger generation, but you don't want to be seen as the elitist Hollywood party. That's a danger of the Democrats.
We're out of time, but quickly, the headline tomorrow is, Mayor?
Kamala puts him on the defensive and prosecutes Trump.
Trump took the bait.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.